Master Your Mindset Radio, Episode 20.
Welcome to Master Your Mindset Radio, the show where we empower you to conquer limiting beliefs and transform your world with your gifting and purpose. Now for your host, Elizabeth Nader.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Master Your Mindset Radio. Happy to have you guys back. I want to discuss today something pretty difficult. And it's really something that unfortunately is affecting more and more people and a greater number of communities at an alarming rate. And that is the incidence of young suicide. Teenagers, sometimes younger than teenagers, young adults, just awful stories of losing these kids way too early in their prime and just seeing it as really an epidemic and seeing the connection to mental illness, seeing the connection to issues of mental health. Now, it's been on my mind a lot recently because we have a town nearby who just experienced 2 more suicides, I think both in high school, and that puts it at 5 kids lost in the past 3 years in that community. So it really is just horrific and so hard for everyone affected by it. It makes us all pause and think. And that is what's going on right now. But to be very personal with you guys, I have been affected by this as well on a personal level. And that has changed forever at how I look at all of these things. Haven't really talked about it in this public format. I did mention it a little bit in my book, but I want to circle back and personally share some things with you from my vantage point for what it's worth that I hope will help the rest of you, help us all to talk to our children, to see ourselves differently, to open up this area, this subject, and address it in a way that can change and save lives. But 2017, September of 2017, we lost a dear friend who was like a son to us. Now, he wasn't our son, and in no way can I take away, match, or even begin to comprehend the pain that his dear mother had when losing him, his sister, his brother, his stepdad. They're great people. I know them, but I cannot stand in their shoes. All I can do is share with you what it felt like to lose a friend. And I say he was like a son to us because he spent, for many years, a great deal of time in our house. We helped him start a business. He was extremely talented, and we worked so much together. I can see him now at our kitchen table. We would work until 10, 11 o'clock at night, just pumping out creative things. And he was helping us build our businesses with my husband and I. We were helping him build his. And so much was going on that was so great. So we got very close to him and understood a lot of the things that he was facing in life. Now, he was in his early 20s when we got to know him, so he had already done quite a bit of life that we had not walked through with him. So he came, as we all do, with all of that past. That all of that started to kind of unravel a little bit when he faced some challenges. But in September of 2017, we lost him to suicide. And previous to that, he had been struggling with mental health issues that came about sort of suddenly, but I don't think anything is suddenly. For us, it was almost like a switch went off one day. And I'll never forget it. And I know the day, I know the moment, I can see it. I can close my eyes and see when it happened. But when you look back, it really is a progression. And I'm going to get back to that in just a minute. But he went on a journey that we went on with him. And of course, his family was right there in a bigger way. That was really difficult. And I understand so much why people fight to destigmatize mental health, because I saw what he went through. And I saw close up in and out of the institutions and in and out of situations with police and with the medical community trying to help him. And I saw how people wanted to really back away in large part because they didn't understand. And the things he dealt with made him sometimes very strange to be around. Let's just be honest. It was hard to be around that, hard to understand it. You couldn't just talk common sense, if you will, into him. No such thing when you're struggling with mental health issues. And I don't think we have the training that we should to really understand it, to be more empathetic, to deal with it correctly. And when you love someone, you try so many things to love on them, and you don't understand why they're not responding. But I saw all that happen. I saw how him being in and out of institutions, which was really no choice, because there's no other option when someone's at the point where you're afraid they're going to harm themselves, where they're just not really dealing with things well. Your only choice many times is to call the police, to have them go into an institution, whether voluntary or involuntary. I saw how the institutions just didn't help. And no offense to them, they know what they know and they try what they try, but it didn't help. In fact, sometimes I think it made it worse. And then I saw the situation of medication and prescriptions, and I saw someone who struggled with not wanting to be on them, but needing to be on them and not being consistent. And that was not good, because they need to be consistent. And, what was the cocktail really that worked? And just that never really kicking in the way it needed to. And just the frustration about all of that. It was heartbreaking. And you stand by and you don't know what to do. And you see this all just kind of implode in front of you. I think that having walked through that with him, though, we did not expect that moment in September 2017 at that time. We were concerned about it. But of course, if any of us, his family included, thought that was the moment, that was the day, we all would have done something. Isn't that always the truth? I'll never forget that call from his mother. I can see it like I'm standing there again today. It's one of those moments. I'll never forget that sound in her voice that was almost primitive, crying that I cannot even explain to you. I just never hope I hear it again. But unfortunately, there are mothers who have to go through that. And we can't, at that point, all we can do is stand by their side. I mean, the pain when all of this happened. And so it was a journey after that to figure out how to heal from that, to figure out how to put it in its place, to figure out, what does this mean? How did this happen to someone we cared about so much? Somebody full of so much life, so much potential, and somebody who spiritually really was completely, he was completely committed to his faith, and even that didn't make a difference. How is that possible? All the knowledge that he really had himself of what was going on, but yet it overcame him. And that is hard to deal with. I started to really think about what this all means when I was writing my book after that. And I so wish he were here, because we talked about my book. I didn't start it yet. And then after he passed, I began to get more serious about the book, Master Your Mindset, The Master's Way. And a large part of inspiration from him in many aspects of that book that I'll talk about in a minute. But I watched afterwards the shock in the community, right? I mean, people just don't understand at such a young age, early 20s, how is this possible? And I give so much credit to his sister and her friends who started an organization in his memory to destigmatize mental illness. And that is their goal and their focus. It's called Ricky's Compass, if you want to look it up online. And the focus is to destigmatize it. It's something that Ricky actually tried to start to do while he was battling the illness. He realized that people just didn't get it. He felt, I think, so misunderstood. And he wanted people to start to invest in things that would help others understand what is it like to struggle with this. But unfortunately, he never got to champion that. So his sister and friends are taking it over, and kudos to them. I give them a lot of credit. And as I talk about it and think about it, though, one thing I struggle with is, how do we not get to this point? In other words, the work to destigmatize it is crucial and so important, because as long as something has a stigma, we're not really going to get people the help they need. And by all accounts right now, the system is broken. At least that's been my experience, and others that I know of as well. So destigmatizing it is a huge step in the way of helping people get delivered. But my heart's cry, and if you think about it, it makes sense with what I do, which is focusing on mindset and conquering limiting beliefs. My heart's cry is, can we just not get to that point? How do we just help people not get to the point where they feel like they have no choice? Not even get to the point where mental illness takes over in their life. Now, if it's a genetic marker, and in some cases it is, where it's, as I understand it, it just may take a traumatic event where it just triggers latent manic depression, depression in somebody, trigger a sort of latent psychosis or whatever. If it's a genetic trait, I understand that to the degree that I can, that we can't always control genetics. However, when you look at epigenetics, that says if we focus on things like lifestyle, our thoughts, the way that we live, the way that we look at the world, we have the ability to rewrite the way our genes express themselves. So, I am not so bold as to say that, I have the solution for overcoming a genetic tendency, but I do believe in epigenetics, and I talk about it in my book, and that is the ability to choose a certain way of living, thinking, talking, speaking, a lot of other things when it relates to health, where we can change the expression of our genes. So my heart's cry is, how do we not get here? Why do we have to have 5 teenagers within 3 years kill themselves in a upscale town here in New Jersey, where by any stretch you would think that all teenagers in that town have great opportunity and good families and, everything that they need? How do we not experience that anymore? What answers do we have for people? How do we look at parents and say, we don't know what to tell you. How is this happening? So my little piece of the puzzle, everybody I believe has something to offer in this. My little piece of the puzzle is mindset focused. My little piece of the puzzle says, what do we do to invest in the mental health of our children and adults as well, for sure? But what do we do to invest in mental health while we still have an opportunity to change it, while we still have an opportunity to stop the expression of something that may be genetic, while we still have the opportunity to affect the way someone looks at what happens to them in life? And rather than go down the route of choices and feelings and thoughts that result in mental health challenges, that we give them the tools and the truth about themselves before those things happen, so that we can ward off the actual experience that mental health issues bring with it. That is where I feel like whatever small role I can play in anyone's life, and all of us could, is to change the way people see themselves before they're even beginning to struggle with mental health issues. So what does that look like? Well, whenever I talk to a large group, and I just did it not long ago with people struggling with addiction, I say, I am talking to you about 2 things, truth and tools. I want to give you truth about yourself and the ability to tell yourself the truth, and give you the tools to overcome the lies that you've been believing, and the tools to let you see yourself clearly enough to be able to then pursue your purpose. Because when we do that, that means our life has meaning. And when our life has meaning, we don't want to leave this earth. When our life has meaning, the idea that we would want to take our life and release ourselves from the pain and escape that which is happening to us no longer becomes such a need, because we have a purpose driving us. I think those are all key to stemming the tide of mental health issues. When I think back to my friend, I have so many discussions with him in my mind where I tried to get him to see his value and his worth. And somehow in all of this, he just couldn't see it. And I feel like the pain that he was going through of this mental health challenge, where he couldn't even control it, was so much for him, he just wanted to escape. It was so much for him that he couldn't even see tomorrow. He couldn't see purpose anymore. He couldn't see destiny. All he saw was pain. And all he saw was really someone that he didn't want to be. And he felt like he had no options. And I see all of that now. But, hindsight, right, is 20/20. Let's use that experience. He would want us to, as his sister and his friends are doing, he would want us to use that experience to save other people. Definitely, because he suffered, and he shouldn't have to suffer. So again, what little piece of this can I offer? And maybe what little piece of it can I get you to think about, especially right now, parents, talking to parents right now. Give your kids truth and tools. Speak truth to them. Help them find truth. It's so hard to find nowadays. Truth about themselves, not what people tell them on social media, not what peer pressure tells them, but give them the ability to see truth, to understand truth. Truth is not relevant. I don't want to hear anymore. Well, that's my truth. This is your truth. There is actually out there some truth that's not relative. Obviously there are some things that's true to one person, not true to others. But with every person, there is truth that is not relative. So help them find that, because the first thing we have to do is tell ourselves the truth. Because when we believe lies about ourselves, about other people, about our future, when we believe lies that shadow, that change, that cloud the way we see ourselves, it starts to obscure purpose. It starts to obscure destiny. And when purpose and destiny are obscured, then really hope is lost. And when hope is lost, what is left? The only thing that we have sometimes is hope. We can never lose that. And I saw my friend lose that, frankly. I see now, looking back, the progression that was happening. While we all fought to try to get him to see how amazing he was and how bright his future was and how many choices he had, he was losing hope. So when I wrote my book, and I wrote the chapter about the 14 steps to healing limiting beliefs, conquering them and pursuing your purpose and dealing with these lies, the first step is, where are you? The first step is to admit to yourself the truth of where you are. And I added to that, because of my friend, the progression scale that I felt like God showed me, which is weary, wounded, and wrecked. And if you've read the book, in there I talk about the fact that we are somewhere on that continuum when we are dealing with a limiting belief or a lie, which can then turn into a mental health issue if we don't deal with it correctly. So where are we on that scale? Weary? Most of us have been there, are there, go there often and come back. Wounded? So weary is like you have a cold, right? And you deal with that differently. Wounded is, all right, we got to go to the emergency room. This thing is getting more difficult. And then wrecked is, we're in the ICU and it's serious. And the reality is there's so many more tools we have and so much more truth to tell when someone is at the weary stage or even prior to entering that, because we can actually get them to listen to us. We have the opportunity then to speak into their hearts, into their minds. When they move on the continuum and they're not dealing with those lies and those limiting beliefs and that mindset that's toxic, and they start to then move on the continuum from weary to wrecked, it becomes harder to reach them. The truth is harder for them to hear because their spirit starts to become dampened. And that's really where we connect with truth. So as you move on the continuum, it becomes harder and harder for people to reach you. And then when you get to wrecked, weary, wounded, and wrecked, it becomes a serious, urgent issue. And the way we deal with it has to be different then. It has to be, much more intense. So I want you to think about what you can do before you or your loved ones or children around you or friends around you, before they get to the stage of weary, and especially before they get to the stage of wounded. Because all of us get weary, but we need to deal with the lies that we're believing, the limiting beliefs. We have to address all of that, find the truth, use the tools to keep ourselves healthy mentally, to keep our outlook in a way that protects us, to conquer these limiting beliefs, to tell ourselves the actual truth, stop believing lies. It's a daily process. So what do we need to do? What tools, what truth can we tell our children? Can we tell ourselves so that we don't move on the continuum? My prayer is always with my children that I am in touch with them enough to know if they're struggling with something at the weary stage, that I can intercept it and I can give them truth and tools to keep them from moving to wounded. And if, God forbid, we get to the wounded stage, then we deal with it differently. It's more urgent. I bring in more tools. I bring in more help. Just like you would do in a medical situation, it becomes more intense at that point. You can't use the same tools and the same techniques you used at the weary stage. And then absolutely, God forbid, if we move all the way to wrecked, then we're in an urgent situation. I wish I knew that back then in a way that I could, use it to help save a life. There's a lot about that that's hard to look back and say, what could I have done differently? Even though I did so much, I thought but we're dealing with something so much bigger than us. Mental illness is a real thing. Mental health is so important. We don't deal with it right in this society. We worry about our physical health, or we should. Many of us worry about our spiritual health, or we should. How about our mental health? What are we doing with our mind? Spirit, soul, and body, guys. Soul is the mind. You've got to deal with all three. Keep yourself from the continuum. Keep yourself from moving along that. Look, if you got sick with something, you would, if you're a rational person, do everything you could do to heal from that illness before it got worse, and then before it got worse, and then before it eventually took you down. We don't do the same thing with our minds, and we should. It doesn't make any sense. So it's time to address our minds the same way we address our bodies. We need to give ourselves the same kind of care. We need to see those around us and say, they need help, they're weary. They need more help, they're wounded. And God forbid they're in the wreck state. We need to hit the alarm bells and do everything we can to save this life. And a large part of the truth and the tools is focused on value and purpose. Because when someone knows that they are valued, when someone knows that they have a purpose in a way that is meaningful to them, they will push through the hard times. They will, because that is what drives you ultimately. And when you lose that sense and when you lose that hope, it's much more difficult. Now, to that end, I've been very inspired to put some work into another book with a great friend of mine, Lori Sika, who is my master social media person, and also just such a dear friend and such a heartfelt individual who has such a burden for all of this as well. Ricky was also her friend, and she is incredibly intuitive when it comes to where people are in life and what they need and what matters. And so spiritually, we're connected, and we both decided that we want to write a book together. Now, I'm not going to tell you the name of the book yet because, we want to unveil that as we work on it. And we both have other book projects, ironically, this year. So the timing will be what it's meant to be. But our heart is in it, and it's dedicated to helping middle school students understand their value and their purpose, to try to deal with mindset issues and mental health issues in the age group where I think a lot of these seeds get planted. We see teenagers and high school and young adults, we see a lot of suicide, and we certainly see it younger than that. But everything that I've read and most of the statistics bear out that the problems start in middle school. And sometimes they start earlier than that, but definitely middle school, where things start to change for kids, and it's a difficult time. It can be anyway. So the focus of our book will be to those kids and to helping them be healthy in their mindset, helping them to see that they have purpose, that they have meaning, they have destiny, and to really give them truth and tools to survive that time of their life and to thrive, and to try to bring down this horrible epidemic that is destroying families and breaking hearts. And that is our hope, and that is something that we've put in front of us as a big goal. So we'll tell you more about that in another time. But I want to leave you with encouragement that, we all have stories, we all have pain, we've been through things that are difficult. But it is important that each of us look at those around us, those that God has put into our life, and we make sure at every opportunity that we invest in them and deposit into them hope, purpose, destiny. Tell them what their gifts are. Tell them that you appreciate them. Help them see what a bright future they have. You do your part. You never know that one time that you talk to somebody. I often think about if only he had picked up the phone that time. And so many times he called and so many times we talked, but that one time he didn't call. And I wonder, are there opportunities around me where I can say something to someone? We're so focused on us. We're so focused on our daily lives and what we have to do. We don't notice things. We need to notice. We need to pay attention. We need to stop this epidemic because it's destroying a whole generation of kids and families, and it's sick. It really is. It's not okay. So all of you out there in the set with the sound of my voice, we can all make a difference. You don't even have to have experienced this firsthand, secondhand. I know that it makes you sick, even if you haven't been involved directly with losing someone to suicide or to mental health issues. I think it's time for all of us to step up and be sensitive to it and consider that the health of our brain and our mind is just important as that of our body. In fact, I would argue, at least from my little slice of the world, which is mindset, and there's so much more to it, but I would argue with you that everything starts in the mind. The body follows the mind. We have to take care of it. We have to be careful what we believe. Stop believing lies. We have to be careful what we think upon, what we focus on, what we let where we let our mind go. We have to be strong and single-minded. So bless you all. I know that this is a tough subject, so I'm sorry if it's a little bit of a downer, but on the other hand, it really is something to encourage you to go out there and change somebody's world. Just one person. Start with one person and pay attention. Put your feelers up. Ask God every day, hey, is there somebody I can affect for the better today? And suddenly people will come across your path. You may not know them or see them again, but you can do it. Trust me, you can do it. We all have to help each other. So guys, have a blessed week. Please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss it. And definitely join the Facebook community. We've got some exciting things coming up. I can tell you now that it looks like it's going to be Saturday, March 28th for the first Mindset Reset of 2020. It's an all-day intensive seminar that will help change the direction of where you're going this year and really bring your mindset to a place where you can start to see significance and then success. So I encourage you to watch for those details because I'm going to keep that at a small group of people. So it will be definitely an elite number. So keep it in mind and watch for the details so you can register quickly and get your spot. So all of that is forthcoming. Thanks for spending your time with me. We will talk to you guys next week and see you online.
Thank you for listening to Master Your Mindset Radio. Before you go, if you want to be part of a free online community of like-minded individuals for support, resources, and inspiration as you conquer your limiting beliefs and pursue your purpose, go to elizabethnader.com/community. That's elizabethnader.com/community, or search for Master Your Mindset Academy private group on Facebook. Looking forward to seeing you online.